Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We'll now go to Community and Economic Development. Michael Littlequist is the chair.
Dean, thank you so much. We have 3 items before us today before the Community and Economic Development Committee. Joining me on the committee are council members Murphy and Vargas. We're actually going to, at the staff's request, if there's no objections from the committee, take those in a slightly different order. The order would be item 3 would go first, and then we'll pick up the other 2 items. 1 and 2 would come second and third. Any objections to that? Okay, so we're going to resume our discussion of the incentives for urban villages and affordable housing. These are targeted incentives. There's a staff memo which has 8 topics to discuss in this area, and I believe we covered several of them. I'd like to maybe turn it over. I don't know whether Ms. Coles. Ms. Coles, if you'd like to maybe, I don't know, summarize what we've done and where we need to go.
Sounds great. Yeah, as far as actions to date, Council had previously directed staff to compile a list of existing and potential incentives to encourage development within urban villages and for certain targeted forms of development. A package of these recommendations were introduced on March 23rd, and then our previous 2 work sessions with you focused on just the urban village incentives. So today we'd like to finish going through the discussion agenda that we'd started last time and request any final changes or any final questions. We'd love to get an official motion for direction on those urban village recommendations from you. And then we'll introduce the targeted citywide types of development if we're able to get through that today. That sounds good. So the discussion agenda is on page 56 of the packet, and it includes a summary of some of the comments that were made, but I did want to check to make sure that those accurately reflected what your experience was, or if there was anything else that you wanted me to add as far as the items that we'd gone through so far.
Committee members?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Michael? I concur. I think you summarized the sense pretty well. But Jack, comments or question?
Yeah, I wanted to discuss a little bit about number 5, the B&O tax credit, and the 2-story requirement that you're recommending. Can you? What's your definition of an existing vacancy? Like how many months or years or whatever that an existing vacancy would have to be there before considered to be vacant?
I think we need to work through the details a little bit more, but I think the initial thought was that if there is not a business currently there and it's an existing building, that we would recommend applying the incentive in that scenario.
The other thought that I had too about the 2-story, to me it seems like 2-story, I mean, we're trying to incentivize within urban villages. 2-story seems to be not very robust. And I'm wondering whether or not you'd consider something like have for the incentives that you want to propose for this tax credit, that we would do that for 3 stories. But if you put in a 2-story, that a developer would get 50% of whatever that schedule was that you proposed. Something like that would provide an incentive for 2-story, but a full incentive for 3-story or above, which really would be working towards what we're looking for. And because we have some sort of max or cap for overall expenditure under that category, we might get better bang for the buck that way.
So I want to clarify, there's the B&O tax credit or reduction piece, and then there's also the system development charge and permit fee reduction. And Jack, I think it's that program that where we'd set some thresholds for new development, and we could set thresholds, and we'll bring back a proposal to you with a higher threshold. The B&O tax reduction piece is really not about the developer. It really doesn't have much to do about a developer at all. It has to do with the business that relocates in those buildings. Sure. Okay. We are, I know that staff has some, we're still kind of churning through some of the intricacies involved in establishing that program. We'd have to bring that back. The 2-story versus just an outright, any business coming into our urban village. So we're still kind of discussing that. The 2-story piece was really got us thinking when we added Samish Way to the list and really thinking about what kind of business do we want to incentivize in that particular area. But in the case of Fountain, it is mostly a one-story district. And we do want to encourage businesses to locate into those vacancies. But we'll take that into consideration and have a more thorough discussion when we bring back that ordinance.
Well, to be clear, this B&O tax credit is available for existing buildings, I believe.
Correct.
Even if they're one story. So, for example, a new business going into a vacant space on Sandwich Way or along the Fountain corridor, they would qualify. So this question really is for new construction. And yeah, for the new construction and existing buildings for the SDC and permit fee reduction, that is set at 3 stories. I kind of like the idea of aligning them because you're right, even though this is a tax credit to what might just be a tenant or a renter in a building, it sort of says to the builder, again, of a new building, not existing, if you're going to build a building, if you build it 3 stories, your tenants will qualify for a B&O tax credit, as well as you qualifying for an upfront construction credit. So I kind of like the idea of aligning them. You know, I don't know. It seems to me that I would like them to be aligned personally. I don't want us to give away our gold cheaply. I want to buy, you know, I want to buy 3, 4-story tall buildings in an urban village, or not at all. Roxanne.
Just a thought regarding the idea of when the vacancy would apply. I think it should apply that day. Because when we have vacant buildings, that makes it unsafe, that makes it lack the development, that gives us one less choice of places where we can go, shop, dine, and play. So that's just my thought on that.
I do want to clarify that on the vacancies, that was just kind of more of a word choice, I think. In this case, it's really about the business coming to one of those. We're not going to be checking timelines, so it is that day or that hour.
Okay, I'm going to let Jack speak again, though he's not on the committee, unless you guys got questions. But before I do that, Jack, the process here is getting a little bit hairy. So I'm thinking because the conversation always jumps from incentive to incentive, because they kind of work together. So I'm going to allow it to just stay hairy for a while, but then I'm going to want to go back, and I think the committee will need to vote on these in a sequence and order to see where we have agreement and not. Is that okay with the committee, that we kind of let it hang loose for a little bit longer?
I would like to vote on all of these together.
Okay. Let's come
Ready
back
to
to
do
that
that
then.
too.
Okay. So and I'm committee chair. I would not, because some of these I have a different opinion on than some of the others, and I want that to be able to register in our recommendations. Are you looking for the recommendations actually from the full council, presumably tonight, or will you accept the committee's feedback as sufficient to go forward? What are you imagining? Because the committee doesn't speak with the council, but are we at that formal stage yet?
We're not at a formal stage, but we want enough direction to know that we are, because there's a lot of work involved in the matrix that's in your packet. So we do want enough assurance that we're marching up the right hill. So if the committee could refer to council, that would be helpful.
Okay, given that we're going to refer to the council, I'm going to have us lump these together when possible, but separate them out if there's a minority opinion on some of them, so the council can hear that there is a mixed opinion on some and unanimous on others. So, Jack, though, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just a real quick comment about what Roxanne was mentioning about vacancies, about immediate vacancies. I've talked with two businesses that have been kicked out of their leases because the property owner wanted to do something different. And I'm just a little concerned that this might be one of those things that might be different. That, some business that might be interested in getting this tax credit goes to the property owner and says, I'll give you this lease if you kick out these other guys. And I don't want to see that happening. So I'm just a little concerned, and I think, the vacancy consideration that Darby said that she'd be working on, I think that's, whatever that definition is, that it should be long enough so that it doesn't allow for that type of a gaming of the program.
Pinky?
I'd like to move that we move forward with, proceed with the draft ordinance, including all 8 recommended suggestions.
We have a motion. Is there any discussion on this motion? So to understand your motion, you're moving that we give direction to, we give direction to staff to proceed with all 8 recommendations as written in the staff recommendation.
I do.
Any further discussion of this? I'm voting no. I'm ready to support the majority of these, but I'm unable to register the feedback that I would like to give to the staff or convey that feedback to the rest of the council if we just vote the entire slate. And we actually have had no discussion of one issue and a half a discussion of one of the others, so I think it's premature even for the committee. Roxanne?
I don't find it to be in any way premature. We've had this information before us. It's coming before us once again. We've vetted it. You may have other ideas, but I don't. I support what the staff has done with this. We need to move forward with economic development, so I'm going to support Pinky's motion.
Any further discussion, Pinky?
I feel like we have gone through these thoroughly on multiple occasions. We've had plenty of time to read them in depth, and I'm very comfortable moving forward.
Well, as an example, I was set to ask a question on to which some of these incentives apply, which urban centers some of these apply, and I haven't yet been able to ask that question. So again, it's not that I don't understand the proposal. I would like to discuss the proposal further. Are there any further comments on the motion to recommend council tonight that we approve all 8 of these staff recommendations? All those approved, or in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Bring that forward, the next recommendation tonight. Next item.
Michael?
Oh,
Oh.
So I just want to clarify that the 8 recommendations were kind of thorough dialogue on the full set of recommendations. So the full set of recommendations is titled City of Bellingham Redevelopment Incentives, and it looks like this. And I don't have the packet page number. So I think this is the set, and then as modified by the 8 kind of discussion items is, I just want to be clear that that's what we're looking at. There's the short-term, mid-term, long-term kind of work program, really.
I'd be willing to alter my motion to accommodate that wording. I was just looking at the 8 as it's proposed, but whatever you feel is the entire package that you have proposed.
well, the motion was on the 8 items in the memo. I'm not sure what you're suggesting now.
Tara, do you feel like that adequately addresses what we were, or do you feel as there needs to be a change?
I think that if you could make a motion on the matrix, that would be helpful to staff.
In addition to?
In addition to. Yeah, as modified by the discussion agenda, which is what you just approved, the discussion agenda. Sorry that we didn't lay that out very clearly. But there's a matrix on the urban village incentives, and then there's a matrix that we're going to get into maybe
Hopefully,
today.
maybe not.
On kind of those that apply citywide, and it's the urban village matrix of recommendations. There's a lot more that we're recommending than we discussed in the discussion agenda.
But all of those things we've gone through in our packet and.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So for example, the brownfield redevelopment opportunity zones, I don't think we have discussed, but it's in the urban village matrix. So again, if you If there's no objection to the committee, we can modify the motion, but I'm still not sure how you're hoping to modify it. Are you wanting to approve the 9 items in the matrix, or the 8 items in the memo, or both 9 and the 8?
Well, maybe just to make this more simple, we address the 8 in the memo. I can make an additional motion that we approve the matrix for the urban village matrix that is proposed in our packet. Is that?
Okay, so confining ourselves, we're not going to revisit the 8 at this point? We're just going to make another second motion.
That was a mixed recommendation.
Yeah, we've made that vote. Would you like to now make a second motion on what's in the matrix as well?
I believe that is what is required for the staff to go forward. Is that correct?
Okay, any discussion on recommending tonight that all the items in the Urban Village Redevelopment Incentive Matrix also be recommended for approval?
Aye.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Again, I think we haven't discussed this yet. So you have there'll be 2 items I'll bring forward with a mixed recommendation tonight.
Michael?
Jack?
Will Darby, will you be here tonight? Because the committee talked about it, the council hasn't. I have issues too.
We'll talk about it tonight.
Yeah. I didn't want to have that you had to come back, because in the work session we weren't able to complete the work in the afternoon, but.
Okay, we're going on to the second item, which was listed as number 1 in the agenda packet. It's a low-income housing impact fee exemption. So this has to do with existing state law, which allows us to waive for low-income housing a large portion of the impact fees, but there's a proposal that apparently requires an implementing ordinance. Will this be you, Tara?
Sure, I'm going to introduce the topic. We were hoping that we would have been able to provide you with an overview of the other matrix in your packet, but we are flexible and nimble. So we are bringing forward, David Stahlheim is going to be joining me, a proposal for you, and this is, we're requesting council direction on a recommendation to draft an ordinance to exempt 80% of the impact fees for those low-income housing projects on the city's annual action plan. This is one of those recommendations that you will find in your packet and that you've had before you since, I guess, March, that staff is bringing this recommendation forward now a little bit earlier. We were hoping to be a little further along because we do have a project that is in for permitting. It's a farm worker housing project that is having difficulty with financing and being able to fill the gap. And so we're not trying to rush you. So if you're not comfortable moving this forward, no worries. But it seems like many of you have been comfortable with the package before you. So I'm going to turn it over to David to provide you with a little bit more background on this proposal.
Thank you, Tara. David Stahlheim, Community Development Block Grant Manager. So the RCW for impact fees, when it was first adopted, always had an exemption for affordable housing. However, it required exemption for affordable housing for impact fees. However, required it to be backfilled with other funds. And so if someone came to you and asked for the impact fees to be exempted, you basically had to go either to the general fund or some other funding sources in order to pay for that impact fee. So you couldn't just waive it and exempt it. Legislature back in 2012 provided an allowance that would say up to 80% of the impact fees could be exempted without having to backfill it. The one caveat to it all is that school impact fees, the school district has to sign off on that exemption, and we haven't started the conversation with the school districts with respect to that, but we will if the council wants us to move forward. So we are proposing for your consideration and ask for your direction to bring back an ordinance that would look at exempting 80% of development impact fees, and that would be your transportation impact fees and your park impact fees. And if the school districts agree with school impact fees, as well as after we put the memo together, we've had conversations with Public Works, with Ted Carlson, to also propose an 80% exemption on system development charges. So that would be your storm, sewer, and water system development charges. It's a whole different set of RCWs. It didn't have as many restrictions, but we are proposing that we add that to the package, and didn't get that into the memo because that conversation happened afterwards. We would be trying to draft this ordinance and bring it back to you at your next meeting for your consideration. And if that happened, then we would be ready to allow for this current project that's coming in that is in for permits right now to potentially be exempt from the impact fees and help financially for that project. So gave you a fiscal note in there about what those costs are. For example, for this one project, the impact fees are almost $267,000 for parks, traffic, and schools. If reduced 80%, they would end up paying a little over $53,000 for impact fees for that. So there definitely is a loss of funding to the different accounts that you need to be aware of. But these are incentives that would also help to move these projects forward. The reality is that if they get charged for that, we end up paying for it out of our funds, the levy funds, and this will allow our levy funds to get stretched farther to do more benefit in our community as well. So, any questions?
Roxanne?
I just want to say that I'm so completely supportive of this because I really feel like one of the eminent needs for our community is to get more affordable housing. And the modern type of low-income housing, the kind that improves the quality of life for any individual, that allows people to get better jobs, that helps people take care of their families. I just think this is really important work for us, and it's the kind of development that we have to work really hard to attract.
David, I was just wondering, the county has some economic development dollars, and there's a loan program so that where the county will give a long-term loan, which doesn't necessarily have to be paid back ever if the housing stays affordable, to pay for permit fees, not permit fees, impact fees. How would this interact with that? In other words, isn't there already a way that the county has to waive some of these impact fees, or are these seen as kind of doubling up and overlapping, or some may apply in some jurisdictions and not in others? How do those two, the county program and our city program, interrelate?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, the county's program is not a waiver or not having to pay back. It's actually a loan that's due in 20 years. And so it's a balloon payment that's due in 20 years. And so this one project that came to us, they cannot accept those types of terms because they can't finance it. They come to us, they're going to have a 40 or 50-year loan package. Their deals with tax credits are 40 and 50 years. They can't have a payment stream that's ballooned in 20 years, and so that program as it was established does not work for them. However, one of the things that we would like to do is, in consideration of us waiving things, is for the applicants to demonstrate that those other funding sources are not eligible and that we do get some that there is some benefit to us. So we will take that into consideration. But for this project and the other project we just approved on the action plan for the senior housing, they did not know either that it had a repayment mechanism in 20 years, and that does not pencil out for their operating pro forma.
The county's program with their economic development dollars, has it worked out for anybody yet? Or is that 20-year balloon kind of a deal killer?
The only projects that, there haven't been any rental projects on it. There have been homebuyer projects, several in Ferndale area that have gone forward, self-help housing projects that have done some financing there. Honestly, what I've heard is that some people just hope that at the end of 20 years, when those all balloon, that the county will change their requirements that get repaid. But our other housing developers can't rely on that. They can't go to the bank with that kind of assumption.
I have another question. This is already authorized under state law. What do we need the ordinance for? Because we have waived in the past and made up. Why do we need an ordinance to do what's already authorized?
Because impact fees have to be authorized by our local ordinance, and so we have to pass the ordinance to do this. Yeah.
Okay.
We have to have the rules there.
Do we have a motion yet on this? Roxanne?
Just going to make one. I move that we ask staff to draft an ordinance regarding low-income housing impact fee exemption for review at our next council meeting.
Any further discussion? I thoroughly agree. I believe that for a long time I've been advocating for ways for the public to offload this particular publicly imposed burden for what is public infrastructure. That's what the impact fees are used for another public benefit. It just makes so much sense that this particular fee is one that we can work with and waive to support affordable housing. All those in favor of recommending tonight that we provide direction to staff to develop an ordinance along these lines signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Bring that forward with a unanimous recommendation. We now go on to the last item for the committee today, which is a review of the Community and Economic Development Division's 2015 work plan. So what we've been hearing actually has already been part of that work plan. I think there's like 2 or 3 or 4 items at least already checked off, or mostly checked off on the work plan. So I guess we needed to have Tara come in before she'd finished her 2015 work plan. Ms. Sundin.
I'm calling it an update at this point,
Thank
right?
you. Thank you.
Okay,
review.
so I'm here to present the Community and Economic Development Division's work program for 2015, and in many cases it goes into 2016. I asked my team to join us today. You obviously recognize a few of these players, but Darby and David Shannon. Do you guys know Shannon? She works in arts and tourism. And Lisa and Matt, they are our experts on housing rehabilitation. And Barbara Barr keeps us in check with our accounting. As you can imagine, with CDBG and home and grants that some of us pull in, she keeps us all straight. And I'm not sure if Heather made it in today, and Katie is back in the scene here today. So we have 6 FTEs working in community development, and then 3 staff that serve community development as well as some of the other divisions. I lumped our work program into 3 categories. One of those is implementing urban villages. Our section's been involved in planning a lot of the urban villages, and now we're focused on implementing those plans. This shot is of course, Bay and Holly. This is, I think, a really good example of where the city played a key role, but not the only role, in revitalizing part of our downtown. We looked to an area that was starting to show signs of health, and we invested and some money, and now it's even healthier. People refer to it as the heart of downtown. Well, we're seeing some similar growth over on State Street. We've got some kind of health and vibrancy going there. And so Katie Franks in our office is working with Freeman Anthony in Public Works, and they are looking at the entire State Street corridor. And what we're looking for are places to kind of amp up what's happening there with the businesses. So we're looking at creating places for people, so with the lens of placemaking. These are 2 areas, Old World Deli, and there's some bars there, and then the one on the right is Bella Flora. Hopefully a new restaurant will come in. But those are examples of places in the State Street area that we could create something, an experience for those businesses to spill out and activate the street. So State Street has an extra few feet of real estate because we used to have 3 lanes of traffic, and now we have 2 with a bike lane. So we have some extra feet to work with, and we're also looking for opportunities for angle parking. But before we go ahead and switch over to angle parking, we want to see if we can create some places like in front of the Temple Bar and Mount Bakery that we did a few years ago. So that is moving forward. I think that plan is set to be complete here in the next few weeks.
And Tara, there was a public meeting, I think, on that for some public feedback about 2 months ago.
Yep. Incentives, I don't need to go into any detail whatsoever on this one, but you've just or hopefully set a work program for us in our department as well as our other colleagues in planning or public works and parks, et cetera. This is an example of a project that's not being led by the city, but this is an example of something that we have assisted one of our partners with. Mayor Kelly's not here today, but she is a big supporter of the Main Street program that the state of Washington runs. And we've been encouraging the partnership to move forward with that. And they were successful. They did apply. We helped them with the application. They became a Main Street organization, I believe, in December and have already raised a considerable amount of funds through that program. The state just maxed out their threshold, though, at I think it's about $1.5 million statewide. So unfortunately, they were just kind of getting started. They did raise a lot of money, but not as much as they could have. So they're going to get an even earlier start for 2016. We're also helping them on their committees. I'm serving on the Economic Development Committee. Katie's helping with historic preservation. Pinky has been working with us and some of her colleagues on the Tourism Commission in developing some new banners. They started going up last Friday. Is it Dave James? Dave Jamie in Public Works is hanging these for us. I had told Shannon, I think a little late, like maybe 2 months ago, that they needed to be hung before Memorial Day weekend, and she had this panic look on her face, but she pulled it off. Downtown, they're hanging those this, I think today actually, and most of these banners will be hung by the weekend. We're excited to show a package of banners for both downtown and Fairhaven that represent Bellingham. So you can tell that both downtown and Fairhaven are in the same city. We're also looking at connecting the two districts down the trail corridors, and we're looking at, we will also be installing some permanent banners, meaning they can stay up year-round, they're not fabric, on Lakeway and Fairhaven Parkway. Samish Way is a high priority for the division and the city as a whole. Darby is leading a coordinated strategy to address some of the challenges that we have in this particular urban village, or what we hope to become an urban village someday. You're well aware that we are in a process of condemning the Aloha. That determination was upheld by the court, but the property owner has appealed that decision. So we're in that process right now. However, if we do end up owning this site, the Community Development Division will be working as quickly as possible to get that site turned around and redeveloped. Another important aspect of the work we do in community development is affordable housing and social services. I'm not going to go into too much detail because David was here at your last meeting presenting the 2015 action plan. That included new activities surpassing a $5 million threshold. We're a community, for the size we are, we have a very large budget, and that's due to the housing levy that's been passed by our citizenry. I mentioned Matt and Lisa. This is a program that's been in place since the 70s. This is a program that the city runs ourselves, so we don't contract this service out. This is the city's homeowner rehab program. Hundreds, I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of housing units have been preserved through this program. Keeps people in their homes for much longer in improving their quality of life and the safety. And also when you look at the housing stock that this program's touched, it's predominantly around the city center. I have to believe that it's contributed to keeping some of these homes standing. So. The production of housing, photo on the right, is obviously not a brand new home, or maybe it is, but it looks old. But we do have the homeowner program where we participate in first-time home buying program. The photo on the left is of Walton, and that's representing new rental housing. We're excited about a project that's coming in close to the Walton by Mercy Housing. It's a senior housing project that will take the old Wilson Motor site and redevelop it. It's a fantastic location. We're really excited to see that come online. Of course, our Housing, Human, and Social Services grants. We have 35 contracts that will be executed in the next few weeks, exceeding $600,000. So this is where we reach out to our service providers, those that are experts in various fields, and contract with them to deliver important services to our community members. Wanted to call out the Homeless Outreach Team. This is a brand new program. We contracted with the Opportunity Council to run this program. It is funded by the City of Bellingham solely. The woman in blue, her name's Kate, and in red is Teresa. They are the HOT team, and they are active out in the community every day, connecting those that do not have homes with housing and services, and really building a relationship that sometimes takes a long time to build that trust and get people. Obviously, our goal is to get them out of this situation and into a safer living environment. And then finally, economic development. I want to make sure you're aware that this is just, I'm just capturing the pieces that the Community Development Division is responsible for, but the city is doing a great deal with regards to economic development. I like this photo because it shows two really important but very different parts of our community all in the same shot. Downtown, you're looking at a pretty vibrant part of downtown in the Arts District right next to the Waterfront District. The Waterfront District is part of my work program, not my team's yet. We're hoping we will get to that point where we need community development programs down there. We also are the liaisons to about 12 to 15 economic development organizations, practitioners. Darby and I serve as points of contact for the business community if we find that somebody needs kind of some special help internally, or maybe just some outreach to let them know that, yes, we really do want you to relocate or to stay in Bellingham, and even though they need to relocate and they're growing. So those are some of the things that you might not see in this slideshow, but there's a lot going on kind of more behind the scenes. The Economic Development Strategic Action Plan is drafted. This is, for those of you that recall when you adopted the 2013 Economic Development chapter of our comprehensive plan, this was one of those tasks kind of mentioned in there. And Darby and I have been working on this, and we've got it in routing internally, and then we plan to reach out to our practitioners and business leaders before bringing it to you, which should happen this summer. This is a shot of, well, the Granary building in the background. If you notice, the Granary building has lots of, it's showing up a lot in this presentation because we're really excited about the rehab of that building. But this is the Army Street site where the shrubbery is. It kind of drops off Holly there. We received this property, or, well, community development is kind of managing it on behalf of the city, as well as 600 West Holly. We've drafted a request for development proposals, but am currently working with the property owners who control access off Central Avenue. Central Avenue would bring us access to the site at grade for a lot less than accessing the site off of Holly. So I'm working with those property owners on securing some easements, and then we'll be able to issue the RFP. Katie and Kate Newell just launched the historic tour for downtown. It's online. You should check it out. The downtown became a National Historic District in December of last year, and so this online tour brings that kind of packages it all up and tells a nice story. We're hoping to build some other tours, walking tours, etc., but this is a great online tour for you to take a look at. We also have submitted a grant application for a heritage tourism program. If we're successful, we will be able to scope and determine the feasibility and kind of to help focus us. We know that recreation, Todd and April were here, recreation's great for tourism, but we also think that we have a great story to tell as a community, and that people do travel and do spend their money in cities that can tell a story and that have a uniqueness to share. So we'll be working on that over the next few months. The tourism program is run by our division. We partner with a number of agencies. This program is really about marketing Bellingham and marketing Whatcom County. So the majority of the funds are used to do just that. Partner with Bellingham, Whatcom Tourism, and then numerous other agencies that can bring people to downtown, or to Bellingham, not downtown Bellingham, but to Bellingham and Whatcom County. We also invest in two key destinations, the Mount Baker Theater and the Whatcom Museum, through that program. We have a new signature event, which is the Waterfront and Seafood Festival, I think official name to be determined. So we're excited about that. We got a lot of interest in that program. So we're providing the seed money to get a new kind of feature event similar to Ski to Sea for our community. And that first event will happen in the fall of 2016. So we've got a little over a year to get that ramped up. You also have just adopted the 1% program. So that was the first part of the year. The second half of this year will be developing that program, working with the Arts Commission as well as the engineers in Public Works and the architects in Parks. And then finally, we do either sometimes host our own events or partner. This is a shot of Kapow, which was a placemaking event hosted by Sustainable Connections, but Darby and our office spent a great deal of time making sure that projects could actually be constructed or happen, in the right, because most of these projects were ideas that could be done in our parks and our streets. And she is also working with those proponents on implementation. Revitalize Washington was here and just a week and a half ago, and so we hosted 250 professionals from around the state to come experience our downtown, and that conference was held at Mount Baker Theater. And Katie led our team and partnered with the Downtown Partnership, State, Tourism, and I think we put on a pretty good show for those attendees. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Hey, thank you, Tara. I've been supporting a lot of these elements individually over the last few years as they've come to maturation. I really do appreciate the fact that they're now pulled together in division and we can see it all together and see the team working on it together. So I really appreciate that. Committee members, any? Roxanne.
I know you haven't set the economic development strategy, but just a general question in that direction. Do you think that the department will get to the point where we'll be doing more proactive economic development rather than reactive? And in reactive, I mean a business comes to our city, starts applying for a permit, versus, let's say, the community starts telling us that they want more international restaurants. We take that into consideration, look at some international restaurants that do quite well and reach out to them, see if they'd be willing to locate here. So I know that's maybe, a dream of mine, but I hope that's something we can move towards so we can start to really help the downtown and the commercial areas take better shape.
So what you will see in the Economic Development Strategic Plan is a pretty tight focus on what we've defined as the City of Bellingham's role. And the comprehensive plan defines that as primarily in the realm of the really important base that we provide is making sure we have the land supply to grow and expand our businesses, which you guys are all taking a look at this year. Making sure that we provide really good infrastructure. That's usually what businesses ask us for is we need our water, we need our sewer, we need roads. And then a really important aspect is the regulatory structure, the tax structure. So you'll see us mostly in that realm, of course, quality of life. I feel like we take a really proactive role in a lot of ways, and in downtown, but what you're talking about is more of a recruitment and attraction, which we have not treaded into. We have pretty limited resources, and so thus far we've really focused on building the businesses that we already have in Bellingham and making sure that they have a place to grow. So that would maybe be a future, or with council direction.
What other community and economic development ideas or projects would staff want to see happen if additional resources could be found?
Well, we're just starting our discussion about our work program. A couple of the we've got some documents that are building a foundation for us. One of those is the adopted city center implementation strategy. So we're going to be looking at that strategy and pulling from it. We have the mayor has solutions groups of chat recommendations, downtown public health and safety, as well as economic development. You'll see some of their recommendations coming forward. So that area, the incentives and the work that you've seen today is, so for us, it's more resources would allow us to do what we want to do more quickly.
Thank you.
Pinky?
I just had a quick comment. I did attend the Revitalize Washington conference, and I really wanted to thank all the city staff who organized that and really showcased our city, because they did a beautiful job. And amongst all the other attendees, there was a definite Bellingham love fest going on, and people really, really appreciated it. So thank you for all the work that was done for that conference.
You're welcome.
Great. Any further discussion? Okay, that concludes the committee work for the Planning Community Development Committee. End of committee.
Thank you, Michael. We'll take another.